The world did not expect this, and neither did Elon Musk. From a country often overlooked on the political map, a voice has emerged that could reshape the future of Africa. In August 2025, President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso made waves. As the global crisis hits, innovations are booming, yet many places in Africa remain left out of the game. While Silicon Valley thrives, Africa is still sidelined. First, a new generation craves knowledge but lacks resources. Books are scarce, technology is a luxury, and knowledge is locked behind digital walls. Saving lives in one of the harshest regions on Earth is crucial. However, a medical truck or a well still remains a distant dream for many African communities. Energy independence is no longer a far-fetched dream. Amid the harsh winds of the Sahel, just a turbine or a few solar panels can light up hope. Agricultural drones help save labor, monitor soil health, and crops. But for many African farmers, it's still just a blueprint on paper. This is a statement. A small country with a GDP under 20 billion is daring to leap forward. Industries worth hundreds of billions of dollars in the global market. While Wall Street debates risks and profits, Burkina Faso is showing what sovereignty through innovation can look like. So the question is clear. Are we witnessing the birth of Africa's new Silicon Valley? And if so, how will the world respond? President Ibrahim Traoré views these inventions not as isolated successes, but as the foundation of a deeper vision. He declares that the era of dependency is over. The time when Africa's progress relied on foreign aid, imported technology, or approval from international organizations has ended. What Burkina Faso is announcing is not just hardware, it is a philosophy. Solutions created in Africa for Africa by Africans. Consider this paradox. A country with no automobile manufacturing industry, no major factories, and a GDP under 20 billion has achieved breakthroughs that even advanced economies are still struggling to attain. How did this happen? Traoré's answer is simple yet profound. When demand meets determination, innovation becomes a matter of survival. These inventions are not gifts from Western donors, but the results of African engineers, scientists, and students believing in their own capabilities. This symbol carries immense power. For decades, the neo-colonial system taught that Africa must wait, must borrow, must import. But Traoré's message has reversed the narrative. Africa does not need permission to innovate. By turning scarcity into creativity, Burkina Faso is writing a playbook for other nations falling into dependency. Financial analysts in New York have warned that if African countries follow this path, the ripple effect could shake the global market. Can a continent once seen as reliant on this resource become a center for groundbreaking innovation? So, we must ask whether this vision is the beginning of true technological sovereignty for Africa, and how have we prepared for this development? What changes will it bring? What makes this moment extraordinary is not just its symbolism, but also the nature of the three revolutionary inventions. The first is a system that converts saltwater into fresh water. Using little energy, it can provide clean drinking water for thousands of families across the Sahel, one of the driest regions on Earth. For a continent where 400 million people still lack reliable access to clean water, this breakthrough is not a luxury. It is a matter of survival. The second is the first electric military truck in Africa, operating quietly with no harmful emissions and designed to withstand the rugged terrain of the Sahel, where infrastructure is still scarce. Beyond technical excellence, there is also strategic significance. An army no longer reliant on imported diesel is an army no longer dependent on foreign supply chains. Wall Street analysts estimate that the electrification of defense, a market expected to exceed 70 billion by 2030, could be reshaped if African innovators are involved. Third, an intelligent agricultural drone. Not just a flying machine, it is a lifesaver for farmers, helping them plant seeds, monitor soil moisture, and adapt to Africa's unique climate. Imagine how much productivity could increase if smallholder farmers across the continent could access such precise tools. So we must ask, are these merely national prototypes or blueprints for Africa's technological renaissance? The true power of these three inventions lies not only in their technical capabilities, but also in their origin stories, a narrative that breaks centuries-old biases. Unlike the notion that Africa's progress must be funded, guided, or permitted by foreign aid, these breakthroughs stem from the ingenuity of local people, not from venture capital in Silicon Valley, but from universities, vocational schools, military workshops, and the farming communities of Burkina Faso. Traoré himself summarized this philosophy: "We build because we have to, not because we have money." Those few words lies the essence of Africa's Renaissance. These technologies did not emerge from surplus capital, but from the urgent needs of daily life. The desalination system was not designed for export display, but to quench thirst in Sahelian villages. This electric truck is not intended to showcase global military power, but to ensure mobility in fuel-scarce areas. Agricultural drones were not created for luxury agricultural purposes, but to survival is the ally of farmers in the fight against drought and soil depletion. And so, a paradox arises. How can a country with a GDP of just about $20 billion create solutions that open up markets worth hundreds of billions of dollars? Worldwide, the answer breaks the notion that high technology is exclusive to the West or Asia. Innovation, as Burkina Faso has shown, is not about who has the biggest factory, but about who has the clearest awareness of needs. This philosophy strikes at the core of neocolonialism. For decades, Africa has been seen as a consumer, not a creator, waiting for appropriate technology to be imported, often sold at high prices. By proposing their own solutions, Burkina Faso not only cuts down on this dependency, but also sends a message. Sovereignty is built in. Laboratories, classrooms, and workshops, not just in parliaments. Financial analysts in New York have taken notice of this. If African countries replicate the domestic innovation model and respond to these needs, the global investment context could change significantly. What would happen to multinational corporations if African consumers started relying on African technology instead of imported technology? This is why these inventions matter far beyond Burkina Faso. They represent more than just machinery. They represent a philosophy of independence put into practice. So the question arises as to whether we are witnessing the first sparks of a technological revolution in Africa, and if so, can the old powers of the world adapt to a future where Africa decides its own destiny? The world's reaction shows a remarkable division. In Western capitals, this announcement has met with silence, confusion, and even skepticism. Major news agencies have reported very little, as if they hesitate to acknowledge that a country with a GDP of under $20 billion could outpace technologies backed by research budgets in the billions. The silent question echoes in policy circles, simple yet troubling. How did they do it? However, across Africa, the atmosphere is incredibly vibrant. Social media platforms are buzzing with hashtags like Africa Can Build and No More Training Millions of Hours. Students at universities in Lagos, Nairobi, and Accra are beginning to hold discussions on how their communities can replicate such innovations. Engineers and entrepreneurs are expressing newfound confidence. If Burkina Faso can move forward, why can't we? The psychological impact can be as powerful as the inventions themselves. For decades, it has been said that Africa must borrow knowledge and wait for permission. Now, a different image is spreading. Africans are shaping their own destiny through creativity and resilience. Financial analysts in New York warn that this shift in mindset could disrupt consumption patterns and investment flows across the continent. York warned that this shift in mindset could disrupt consumption patterns and investment flows across the continent. So the question is whether this could be the spark that transforms Africa's pride into a movement for renewal on the continent. The true measure of any invention isn't the praise from the elite, but its impact on everyday life. In Burkina Faso, the results are visible. The saltwater to freshwater system has reduced waterborne diseases in rural villages, cutting down nearly 20% of hospital admissions, according to local health reports. For children, clean water means fewer sick days and more time in class. The education system isn't driven by foreign NGOs, but by the creativity of Africans. Agricultural drones are rewriting the story of food security. By monitoring land and planting accurately, this method has increased productivity by up to 25% in pilot programs, helping to reduce labor costs for small farmers. Analysts in Washington note that if expanded, this technology could save the entire region billions of dollars from drought damage. and annual crop failures. It's not charity, but innovative solutions that sustain Africa. There are also electric military trucks. Beyond tactical advantages, it has become a symbol. Evidence shows that African nations can build their own tools of sovereignty. For young students, seeing such machines rolling through Ouagadougou isn't just a matter of defense. It speaks to pride, capability, and ownership of their destiny. Enrollment in engineering, robotics, and technology programs has surged by 40% at some universities. So the question is clear: if these inventions can change health, agriculture, and education in one of the poorest countries in Africa, what could they achieve if applied across the entire continent? The inventions themselves are remarkable, but perhaps what's even more noteworthy is the political strategy behind them. President Ibrahim Traoré and his government do not see these breakthroughs as isolated projects. Instead, they have woven them into a broader development model aimed at eliminating dependency and nurturing sovereignty. At the heart of this model are new production centers, technology incubators, and vocational training centers spread throughout Burkina Faso. These are not ivory towers reserved for the elite, but open spaces where local farmers, recent graduates, and even retired engineers collaborate by directly investing in community knowledge instead of waiting for foreign investors. This policy is rewriting the rules of economic growth. According to local budgets, nearly $150 million equivalent from the National Fund has been redirected to support these initiatives. This is a bold move in a country often deemed too poor to innovate. This approach also empowers local cooperatives and seasoned engineers, many of whom have been sidelined for decades due to foreign-dominated contracting. By providing with resources, tools, and recognition, Burkina Faso is proving that experience combined with new ideas can speed up the transformation process. Just imagine the long-term impact if only 10% of West Africa adopts this model. The regional supply chain will change, and dependence on imports from Europe or Asia could decrease by billions of dollars each year. This plan envisions a West African technology network that goes beyond national borders. The goal is very clear: to ensure that the seeds planted in Ouagadougou will blossom into an innovation ecosystem across Africa. By standardizing training, sharing blueprints, and coordinating research, Burkina Faso positions itself as a test case for autonomous development. This is a vivid testament that African solutions can emerge without Western aid packages or structural adjustment programs. The significance of this symbol cannot be overstated. For centuries, the narrative of Africa has been shaped by outsiders who often only served as suppliers of raw materials and consumers of finished products. But here is a small nation daring to reverse the cycle from consumer to creator, from dependence to empowerment. Analysts on Wall Street have noted that if Burkina Faso's model proves sustainable, it could spark a flow of capital from immigrant communities, redirecting billions in remittances into local businesses instead of just for consumption. This is not just a technological revolution, it is a political statement. By integrating innovation into national policy, Burkina Faso is challenging the assumptions of neo-colonialism that development must adhere to Western regulations. Instead, Burkina Faso demonstrates that progress can be self-generated, inclusive, and sustainable. And thus, the urgent question arises: if one of the smallest economies in Africa can pioneer such a model, what reason is there for larger nations with more resources to follow suit? Could this be the ultimate blueprint, turning the Third World into a self-determining force in the global economy? The announcement of 3 inventions from Burkina Faso is not limited to the borders of Ouagadougou. Within hours, news agencies, analysts, and policymakers globally have tried to understand what many are now calling the Burkina shock. For the first time in modern history, the story of technology flowing only from north to south has been disrupted by a country long seen as outside the loop in global innovation, much to the discomfort of the West. In Washington, Paris, and London, the mood is one of uncomfortable surprise. Policymakers used to viewing Africa as a place of extraction rather than creativity find themselves facing an inconvenient reality. If a nation with a GDP under $20 billion can pioneer in desalination systems, electric military trucks, and drones for precision agriculture, what will happen when larger economies in Africa, like Nigeria with a GDP of $500 billion, South Africa with its industrial base, or Egypt with its scientific infrastructure, choose to follow? Western research organizations quietly publish reports warning of a new technology sovereignty movement emerging across Africa. The implications are profound. Development aid programs, long used as leverage tools, may lose their influence if countries show self-reliance. Multinational corporations, which depend on the African market to earn billions of dollars in annual revenue, are beginning to ask themselves a troubling question. Will African consumers soon abandon imported goods in favor of local solutions? The discomfort is not only political, but also financial. Market analysts on Wall Street predict that if African countries scale up similar innovations, the global supply chains for water technology, defense equipment, and agriculture, industries with a total value exceeding $800 billion, could face disruption. Investors are starting to whisper, could Africa not just be a resource hub, but also a competitor in the future? The excitement of Africa. While the West hesitates, Africa celebrates. From Lagos to Nairobi, from Johannesburg to cartoons, the timeline on social media is flooded with hashtags like TARS Africa Can Build and the Burkina model. Young Africans see in Traoré's announcement not just machinery, but also a metaphor, proof that creativity is not limited by borders and dignity can be built just as surely as technology. Universities are starting to hold workshops on how to replicate Burkina Faso's model. In Ghana, students at Kwame Nkrumah University organized a hackathon inspired by drones for agriculture, attracting teams from across West Africa. In Nigeria, civil society groups are calling on the government to fund local innovation programs. The shift in mindset is unmistakable. Africans are beginning to ask the big questions with pride. If Burkina Faso can do it, why can't we? Challenging the narratives of neoconservatism. For decades, new colonial structures have portrayed Africa as a dependent continent, a resource-rich land, always waiting for foreign aid, foreign investment, foreign technology. But Traoré's announcement hit right at the heart of that narrative. It states that sovereignty does not begin in parliaments, but in labs, workshops, and classrooms. Direct desalination systems directly undermine the dominance of NGOs in water projects for decades. Electric military trucks prove that African armies do not need to rely on imported vehicles that deplete foreign exchange reserves. Agricultural drones are destabilizing the dependence on European and American agricultural corporations who profit from food insecurity in Africa. Western policymakers worry that this will encourage African leaders to demand fairer trade terms. They may also call for stricter regulations on foreign companies and even renegotiate billion-dollar resource contracts. After all, why should a continent that holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves continue to export raw materials while importing finished goods at such high prices? Raw materials while importing finished goods at such high prices. The shift in the global supply chain, the potential impact on the supply chain, cannot be overstated. Africa is not just a consumer, it's also a storehouse of important minerals. Cobalt from the DRC, manganese from South Africa, uranium from Niger, lithium from Zimbabwe. If Burkina Faso's model is replicated, combining local resource control with local innovation, then Africa could shift from being a stopover in the global economy to a driving force behind new industries. Imagine desalination systems produced in bulk in West Africa, not only sold within this continent, but also exported to drought-prone regions in Asia. Imagine electric trucks optimized for rugged terrain competing in the global defense market currently dominated by major corporations from the US and Europe. Imagine agricultural drones, affordable and adapted to tropical climates, becoming staples in Latin America and Southeast Asia. This is either a nightmare or a dream, depending on where you sit. For Africa, it's liberation. For Western corporations, it's disruption. The financial markets have reacted. There are tremors. African investors abroad, managing billions of dollars in remittances each year, have begun redirecting capital into Burkina Faso's tech incubators. In New York, an investment bank noted that just the perception of Africa's self-sufficiency could shift capital flows by $10 to $15 billion each year. Meanwhile, French media lament that Paris may lose its privileged position as Africa's main partner in infrastructure and defense. The phrase Burkina shock is starting to trend not only in African circles but also in European financial news, signaling the recognition that the global economic landscape is changing. Geopolitical ripples are spreading throughout the region. This announcement complicates Western influence in Africa. For many years, military presence, aid programs, and debt instruments have maintained a form of control. But if African nations begin to see in Burkina Faso a vibrant example of independence, then Western influence will wane. Russia, China, and even India are quickly catching on to this narrative. The Global Times in Beijing praises the significance of the leadership of President Ibrahim Traoré is seen as evidence of a multipolar world. Moscow believes that the achievements of Burkina Faso have proven that the country's call for South-South cooperation is valid. Meanwhile, the West hesitates, caught between skepticism and the fear of legitimizing Africa's awakening in technology and culture. But beyond economics and geopolitics, there is something deeper, which is culture. Across the continent, ordinary people are reimagining what it means to be African in the 21st century, no longer just passive recipients of aid, but active problem solvers. In popular music, lyrics referencing Burkina tech are starting to emerge. On TikTok, creators have staged videos showing Africa building for Africa, attracting millions of views. The psychological liberation can be proven to be the greatest invention. This time, Africa is not just reacting to the world, but forcing the world to respond to Africa. An open question, but every leap comes with risks. Can Burkina Faso maintain its momentum in the face of financial difficulties, political pressure, and potential sabotage from outside? Will the larger economies of Africa rally around this model, or will interest groups block it? And what will happen when global corporations feel threatened by competition, deploying their vast resources to discredit or undermine Africa's innovations? The answer remains uncertain, but there is an undeniable truth. The myth of Africa's technological inferiority has been shattered. The conclusion is a turning point. As the dust settles, the phrase Burkina shock may symbolize more than just a series of inventions. This event could mark the beginning of a new chapter in world history, a chapter where Africa is no longer a silent periphery, but becomes a vocal, creative, and independent actor on the international stage. The risks are significant. If Burkina Faso's innovations are scaled, they could change global supply chains, disrupt multi-billion-dollar industries, and alter the balance of geopolitical power. But perhaps their greatest achievement lies in what they inspire, the courage of a nation believing that sovereignty can be established. And so we must ask, is the world witnessing the dawn of Africa's technological century? And if so, how will the old powers adjust to adapt to a future they never anticipated? History will remember this moment not as a singular announcement of 3 inventions, but as the birth of a doctrine that redefines the meaning of sovereignty in the 21st century. In 2023, President Ibrahim Traoré announced the National Self-Reliance Plan, a blueprint unlike any seen in the Global South. It rejects familiar crutches, no loans from the IMF with the stifling conditions, not reliant on foreign direct investment designated by multinational companies. Instead, they chose the harder path, mobilizing domestic resources, reactivating local knowledge, and transforming national pride into tangible innovation. This is why observers today are talking about the Traoré effect. It's not just about desalination systems, electric military trucks, or drone-serving agriculture. The film tells the story of an African leader who proves that technology and politics are inseparable tools of liberation. Traoré has become a vibrant counterargument to the notion that Africa must wait for outside help to modernize. By linking technology directly with sovereignty, he has turned every invention into a geopolitical statement. Africa will no longer have to ask for permission to exist or develop. This symbol carries immense power. While global organizations preach about development aid worth billions of dollars each year, Burkina Faso, a country with far fewer financial reserves than U.S. cities, has demonstrated The $200 million spent domestically can achieve more sustainable results than decades of foreign aid. This sets a dangerous precedent for neo-colonial forces. If a small country can follow this path, then what? Prevents Nigeria, Kenya, or Algeria from doing the same for Africa's youth. Traoré's perspective not only brings inspiration, it provides a new curriculum on citizenship in schools and universities. Students are now studying Burkina Faso's innovations as case studies in sovereignty. On social media, Made in Africa is no longer a challenge but a badge of honor. For policymakers across the global south, the message is equally clear. Dependence is a political choice, and independence is a strategy. On the international stage, his inventions have become diplomatic tools. Countries that once doubted are now eager to cooperate, not out of charity, but out of urgent necessity. The desalination system has attracted interest from Middle Eastern countries facing water scarcity. Electric trucks have caught the attention of Asian defense industries looking for affordable off-road vehicles. Drone technology is being considered by Latin American governments grappling with an agricultural crisis. In each case, Burkina Faso is negotiating as an equal rather than as a customer. Therefore, Ibrahim Traoré's legacy is not just about three machines, but also about changing Africa's position in the global order. He has rewritten the script from victim to innovator, from borrower to builder, from silence to challenge. But the bigger question remains, will this legacy spark a renaissance for the continent or not? Or will outside forces try to stifle it before it spreads? And most importantly, are the people of Africa and the world ready to embrace a future where the balance of power no longer automatically favors the North? History. Are they ready to accept a future where the balance of power no longer automatically tilts towards the North? History. Sometimes progress isn't marked by